The UFC is such a talent-rich organization that there's so many fighters who don't have a ranking next to their name, but they have so much talent that I believe that they are possibly the future contenders or maybe a future champion of the division. I want to talk about those types of fighters and why I think they are top contenders in divisions in 2 to 3 to 5 years. Now, I do want to get away some of these weight classes, like women's bantamweight. The only person I could find that I really believed was a top contender is Tainara Lisboa, just because she is very fast and strong for this division. This division's really, really, really bad. They're trying to get out as much fighters as they can. The fact that Raquel Pennington is your champion is just no good. No good. Also, flyweight, I couldn't really find a lot of flyweights that I enjoyed that I thought could be future contenders that weren't ranked. I have Yasmin Yazdavicius, Miranda Maverick, and Casey O'Neill, who are 15, 14, and 13 in the rankings. They are some dogs, especially Yasmin Yazdavicius getting a 10-7 her last time out. She is an absolute menace. If she can continue that sort of run, she could definitely be a very big problem in this division. Miranda Maverick, I think a lot of things need to go right for her to be champion. With Casey O'Neill, though, I do think that her striking just needs to be polished just a tiny bit to be an actual threat to this division, because she's kind of like in that Mackenzie Dern sort of fight where she is trying to get the takedown, and by the time she gets the takedown, she's taking way too much damage because her striking isn't up to par with some of these girls in this division. So I do think Casey O'Neill needs to hone that in if I ever want to call her a top contender. But I do think Yasmin Yazdavicius in the future will be in the top 5 and possibly fight for a title. For Strawweight, I did find people outside of the rankings, and this is when we're going to go outside of the rankings now. From now on, it will be outside of the rankings. I have Luma Lukbani. I think she is a very good striker, very well-rounded fighter. Her biggest issue is her pace. Sometimes she does go on a very slow pace. If she could quicken that up, she could be a real issue in this in the 115 division. I also have Yasmin Yarogway and Yasmin Lucindo. I kind of have them paired up because they fight very alike in terms of they are very fast for the division, very young. Their wrestling is not the greatest, but also not the worst. They can do their own thing in the wrestling game, but their striking is where they get it done. And these two are very talented for such a young age that in the future, this will be a very big problem. Now for heavyweights, I did say we're going to stay out of the top 15, but that does not mean we're going to get some good fighters, because this heavyweight division is it's so bad when it comes to skill level. In the heavyweight division, all you really need is very good striking and to be semi-durable. Same with the 205 division, but 205 division is when a lot of skill comes into play, a lot more than the heavyweight division. But in the heavyweight division, I have Waldo Cortez Acosta. I think just because of how fast he is, that he could be an actual issue in the coming years. He's very young, so I do see him possibly being a contender. I also have Rebelis de Spain. Follow me on Instagram. Rebelis de Spain is a huge heavyweight, which is very weird to say, but 6'7", 87-inch reach is very huge for the division, and I do think with the striking credentials that he does have, could lead him very far in this heavyweight division. And if he can get his wrestling to a certain T, I do think that is a very, very scary man in the heavyweight division. And my last guy is Mick Parkin. Now, he just won against Muhammad Usman. However, I do think there is some things that Mick Parkin needs to clean up. He is a very, I don't want to say fat. He does fit the fat heavyweight description, but he's not just a brawler. I do think he needs to lean down a little bit to be an actual issue in this division, with the likes of Cyril Gane walking around, with the likes of Sergey Pavlovich, Tom Aspinall. I think he does need to slim down to be able to be an actual problem in this division. Now, for the 205 division is exactly what I said about the heavyweight division, where you will see people that are just really good strikers that are durable, because there's not a lot of wrestlers. And I'm going to start with Vitor Petrino. I think Vitor Petrino is a very talented striker. He kind of looks like Alex Pereira and kind of fights like Alex Pereira when he is in the cage, but he has thundering power and can be very technical. We saw that in his last fight, where he doesn't just straight up push pace immediately. He will read you out as the fight goes on and then start landing his power punches. I think Vitor is a very big issue in this division. My main issue is the fact that we haven't seen too much wrestling from him. So there is a good chance he is not that good at defending takedowns against the cage, against open mat. So that is my very big issue. My next guy that I have is Carlos Ulberg. Same reasons why for Vitor Petrino. We don't know the wrestling, so that is a con. But Carlos Ulberg's striking is super technical, more technical than Vitor. I think Vitor Petrino has a lot more physicals to him in terms of one-shot knocking power and speed compared to Carlos Ulberg. Carlos Ulberg is a very lengthy and technical 205er, though, that can prove to be a very big issue as the time goes on. Now, my last guy in the 205 division is Rodolfo Bellato. There is a lot to change about Rodolfo for him to be a contender or a champion. Like, number one, don't lift your head up when you start losing against Ihor Potieria. Don't just start brawling it out and leaving your chin up high. That is a very big fucking scare if he is against a guy like Jan Blachowicz, Yuri Prochazka, Alex Pereira, stuff like that. That is a horrible tell. That is something that he needs to really fix. But also just be a lot snappier with his punches. Sometimes in that Potieria fight, I did see he was very flat-footed sometimes. He looked like he missed the punch, and Potieria looked tremendously fast in a world in the 205 division where he isn't the fastest, to be real. And that's Ihor Potieria. I can't imagine if he goes against some talented striker like Alex Pereira, Jan Blachowicz, Alexander Rakic, Yuri Prochazka, etc. So I do think a lot needs to change for Rodolfo Bellato to be a top contender. We move on to the middleweight division, and look, I understand he's very young. I understand he's only had like 2 fights, but I'm putting Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel is an NCAA champion, one of the most credentialed college wrestlers we've ever seen, and he can knock people out. Do you not understand the issue, the reason why I'm putting Bo Nickel on this fucking list? This guy is a dog, and he is very young. He is practicing in the right ways. He's trying to figure out his striking, trying to get basic striking down. In a middleweight division that doesn't really favor too much on wrestling, Bo Nickel could be a serious issue in the future. Now, if this was a month ago, I would never put this man on this list. But after he just whooped the living shit out of Michał Oleksiejczuk, Michel Pereira has to be talked about. Michel stopped flipping, stopped doing some spinning shit, and started just, instead of spinning, he started just hammering body kicks. And they were the most nastiest things ever. And I think if he does have that style to him, this snappy, just very fast twitch striker, it's a serious problem in this middleweight division. And I think for the size that he has, he could be a serious problem, could be a serious issue, and a very big contender in this middleweight division. Now, my last guy, no one's going to be really happy with. It's Ikram Aliskerov. I do think he is a very talented fighter. My only issue is that I do see like Khamzat 2.0. He is a lot less of a fast twitch guy than Khamzat, but he kind of does the same shit. And I do think that is a very big issue if you don't have the same fast twitch pace as a guy that's in your division, and you might have to go against them again, because that's what they were pushing at the start with Aliskerov. I do think that he might not get anywhere. He might be a top contender, but I don't think he'll ever get to a champion like the guys I mentioned before. Before I get torched in the comments, I do think that Ikram is a very good fighter. I just don't see him possibly winning a title. I see him being a really tough contender and maybe having a title shot or two. And, you know, he could win it. If there's a lot of changes to Ikram, I do see it. However, if there's a guy in your division that has beaten you and has looked like just a better version of you, it is very scary to see how you are going to be in the division. And that's why I'm kind of putting Ikram as my third choice. For my 170 division, I have Michael Morales, Brian Battle, and Mikhaił Orobai. I think I said that right. I want to start with Mikhaił Orobai. I don't think he's my first option. I would have Michael Morales. Yeah, Michael Morales. Oh my God. Or Brian Battle. But I do think Orobai is one of the more special fighters coming up. And I think if we do see more fights, he could go up to my number 1 ranking. He looked so good against Uros Medic on short notice, and his wrestling was on point. Absolutely 10-9 all around the boards against Uros Medic, and his striking also looked really well. I see him kind of as like a better version of Rinat Fakhretdinov, because Mikhail Orobai looked like he could do it for 15 minutes, while Rinat had issues with that when he was against Zaleski dos Santos. Now, I understand he did not beat Angelosa technically, but he did beat Angelosa because Angelosa did not want to fucking fight. Bryan Battle looked absolutely insane in that fight, though. Everything was clicking, and I think in a welterweight division with guys who don't throw too many combinations, they throw very one or two punches combinations, and if Bryan Battle, who is a very big welterweight, can set up all these sort of fakes to feints to all the different angles that he was throwing at, I do think Bryan Battle could be a champion in the future if he can keep honing this sort of style that he did against Angelosa. And Angelosa is no easy guy in the park, and Bryan Battle made him look like a scrub. And so I do think Bryan Battle is a very, very talented fighter, and I think he can go very far in the future. My last guy is Michael Morales. Now, not a lot of people thought he was going to beat Jake Matthews, but he ended up doing it. And I do think Michael Morales, given his age and his overall physicals, I think could be a very big issue in the top 5 in the future. I don't think he can do it now. It sounds like, and based off my last video, you guys can go watch that one, I did say he should get a top 15 guy, because he should, but I do think they might push him way too far after that top 15 fight, and it might stunt his growth. I do think there's a lot that needs to be polished in Michael Morales before we can start talking to him about him like some big prospect. We move on to the lightweight division, where I have Mike Davis. Now, I do think Mike Davis is my number one option. He would be by far the number one option if the fucker would just fight more. He knocks people out, submits people submit somebody his last fight, which I didn't think he had that in him, yet he just fights like once a year, so you sometimes just forget about Mike Davis. But Mike Davis is a serious problem in this division and could go very far. Next guy I have the next two guys I have are both European. I have Mateusz Rebecki and Ludwig Klein. I want to start with Ludwig Klein. Ludwig looked really good in his last fight against, well, a short notice guy. However, he was supposed to fight Joel Alvarez, and I had him winning that fight, actually. His striking just looks really good, and his overall wrestling just is off the charts. I think Ludwig Klein is a very talented fighter, and my only flaw I have with him is just his size. He's not the biggest lightweight in the world, and against guys like Joel Alvarez would have been a very tough fight, and if he beat Joel in the way that I was thinking he would, then I'd have him probably number one right now. But Joel, against guys like Jalen Turner, Dan Hooker, those like 6 foot lightweights, I think Ludwig would have serious issues with those kind of guys, and would kind of stunt his growth and maybe not get to that 155 title or 155 top 5 that I was just talking about. But I do see the potential in Ludwig Klein, just like how I see the potential of Mateusz Rebecki, because he is like just another version of Gamrot, but bald. I mean, his wrestling is top notch. His striking is honestly better than Gamrot's, and he's still in this division. I feel like Rebecki has been in the UFC for so long, and no one really talks about him yet. And I think there should be talks about him, because he is an absolute dog in this division. We move on to the featherweights, and my number one option is kind of one of the more obvious options. I feel like it's Diego Lopes. Diego Lopes looks like a soccer mom. I want to get that one through. He looks like what you would make in the UFC game to make it look like funny and comical, but he is an absolute fucking tank. His submission game is so complex. The fact that a guy like Movsar Evloev was getting caught in these tight submissions and was on short notice, and Movsar was so close to tapping. So when you go off that as your first fight, you're going to get those critics. You're going to get those people that says you are going to be that guy. And what does he proceed to do in his next couple fights? Absolutely win them. I mean, he looks amazing in every single fight that he has. Now he's fighting Sadiq Youssef, which is a humongous step up in competition. But I do think with some polishing, with some sort of, I guess, discipline issue, because sometimes it does look like he wants to brawl before looking at anything. And we've seen guys who will start very fast and either A, tire out, or B, get tired, or B, get caught, And so I think that is the big issue with Diego Lopez, but he is my number one. My number two is, I understand he just lost, but he did not lose in my opinion. Isaac Dulgarian is an absolute monster on the ground. The fact that he was able to do that to C-Rod Rodriguez for 10 minutes straight, basically. And if you guys want to, go grab a partner and constantly mat return him for 3 minutes. I bet you will be gassed to the 9th degree. You will be huffing and puffing. And Isaac Dulgarian was winning that fight, and I think a lot of people gave him that fight. For some reason, they gave it to C-Rod. I do think that is honestly a good thing, because Dulgarian can now go to the lab, figure out what went wrong, which was his striking defense was not the greatest, and he tired out very quickly. And then he can hone in this game and be the prospect that I'm really thinking that he could be. My last guy is sort of a very underrated pick. A lot of people might clown me in this, but I do think Nathaniel Wood is a very big problem in this division, given his overall striking is very technical, his wrestling is top notch. My biggest issue for Nathaniel Wood, and which is why I don't have him over these two, is just his size. He was a bantamweight and then moved up to featherweight, and you do see that in some of these fights where he looks very small compared to all the other featherweights. I do think Nathaniel Wood should go down to bantamweight if he can make it there. I understand weight cuts and everything is very difficult, but Nathaniel Wood's striking is just on another level to certain guys that aren't ranked, that I see him possibly being a contender. For bantamweight, I'm going to pick a very easy option in my opinion. I'm going to pick Farid Basharat, not Javid, because Javid just lost to Ariel Helwani. Farid Basharat, though, he is a better version of his brother, and that actually has some killer fucking intent when he is in there. I feel like sometimes his brother Javid is looking for a decision, which is just a horrible sight to look at, because then you have that fight against Ariel Helwani where he ends up losing it and not getting the decision that he thought he was going to get. He left the fight way too close, and was kind of looking over Ariel Helwani. I gotta stop saying his name like that. He has a real fucking name. Let me find it. Oh, fuck it. I'm not gonna find it. Fuck off. His name's Ariel Helwani, okay? My second guy is Said Nurmagomedov, just because this guy has had razor close decisions, and when he is fighting anyone else that isn't Jonathan Martinez, who is an absolute dog, can't wait for that Jose Aldo fight. He is a very talented fighter. His ninja choke is disgusting. His wrestling is amazing. His striking is almost to the levels of Zabit Magomedsharipov. It looks almost exactly alike. Said Nurmagomedov is a very big issue in this division, as well as, in my opinion, Daniel Marcos. Daniel Marcos is super technical, and I think that is something that the bantamweight division has issues with when it comes to slow technical fighters. What do I mean by that? By guys who are able to slow the fight down on you, that can get you to start getting to play their game. Guys like Chito Vera, guys like Jose Aldo when he was fighting, guys like Petroyan, who are able to slow down the first 2 rounds or the first round and then slowly start picking it up as time goes on. I think the bantamweight division, other than Sean O'Malley, has been trumped by those types of fighters. And my last guy is, in my opinion, to the trump card. I think Peyton Talbot or Cameron Simon, they are both fighting each other, but I do think Peyton Talbot has the potential to be one of those guys who can stop those sort of quote-unquote slow fighters and be able to out-tech them in terms of speed and range that he does have, because his striking is just beautiful. It is water. It is just flowy, jab. He'll do whatever. It almost looks like a dance when he is fighting. And given how young he is and how composed he is in that octagon, I can't imagine how it will be when he is a top contender. Finally, I have the flyweight division, and I'm going to go with Joshua Van, Antu Almabayev, and if he's still in the UFC, because I really don't know, Jeff Molina. Antu Almabayev, I'm going first because his wrestling is top notch, and we saw it against CJ Vergara. That is not a tough, not an easy opponent, and he just ragdolled him and made the fight kind of just looked easy. And Antu Almabayev in this flyweight division could propose very serious threats to the champion. I have Joshua Van because of his boxing and how good he is in terms of his boxing range, and his boxing prowess is such a high level for his age. He's only like 22, and he's already being thrown into the UFC division, which is already talented enough that when this guy is like 26, 27, he's going to be a top 5 to champion caliber fighter. And my last guy is Jeff Molina, because I'm Colombian and Jeff Molina is a very talented fighter and he is Colombian. Jeff Molina is a super technical striker, not to the levels of guys like Joshua Van, but he is in that echelon that could be. And if he is still in the UFC, because he has the whole coach issue that we had with the betting, I don't want to get into that. To be honest, I think Jeff Molina is a very talented fighter, and I do think he could be very well, go very well against some of these top contenders in the coming future. Guys, let me know what you think. Let me know if you guys have any prospects that you're thinking of off the top of your head. I'm glad to argue with you guys in the comments. I'm glad to talk about it. The comments are a very safe place. No opinion is going to be hindered. No opinion is going to be judged. Leave it in the comments. You can say whatever. It's been Santi. It's been Studs.